They never asked her name when they took her. At 11 years old, names no longer mattered. What mattered was her body, her silence, and her obedience. One moment she was running barefoot through dust and rice fields. The next she was dragged into a carriage sealed with wood and fear, rolling toward a world she did not understand. The Forbidden City did not announce itself with cruelty. It welcomed her with beauty, so overwhelming it felt unreal. Golden roofs, red walls, silk curtains, the smell of incense drifting through the air. But behind that beauty waited a system designed to erase her piece by piece. From the first night, she learned the most important rule: speak only when commanded. She was washed, inspected, measured, and cataloged like an object. Older women examined her teeth, her skin, the curve of her neck, the softness of her hands. A single mark of disapproval could mean dismissal, exile, or worse. The younger girls cried quietly into their sleeves. Crying loudly was punished. Fear was not dramatic here. It was routine, practiced, and perfected over generations. Training began before sunrise. She learned how to kneel without trembling, how to pour tea without spilling a drop, how to walk with eyes lowered and spine straight. She memorized rituals she did not understand, and rules that changed depending on who was watching. Mistakes were corrected with slaps or with silence, which was often worse. Silence meant you were being watched. Silence meant your fate was undecided. Every lesson carried the same unspoken warning: you exist only as long as you are useful. Footbinding followed soon after. They told her it was an honor, a path to beauty and favor. They did not tell her about the pain that would never leave. Her toes were broken and folded under, wrapped tightly in cloth that soaked through with blood. Fever followed. Some girls screamed until they fainted. Some never walked properly again. A few did not survive the infection. Their names were quietly removed from records, as if they had never been there at all. She learned early that suffering was expected, but complaining was unforgivable. Years passed inside walls she could not leave. Time felt strange in the palace, measured not by seasons, but by summons and silences. The emperor was a presence more than a person, a shadow whose favor could elevate a girl overnight or destroy her without explanation. Concubines were ranked, measured against each other, pitted into silent competition. A smile from the emperor could turn sisters into enemies. A rumor could turn allies into executioners. Trust was dangerous. Isolation was safer. She learned to listen more than she spoke. She learned which corridors were safe, which servants could be trusted, and which smiles had knives. The older concubines taught her survival not through kindness, but through warning. Never eat food you didn't see prepared. Never repeat what you hear at night. Never show happiness. In the shadows of great empires lie forgotten victims and hidden truths. Subscribe for more untold grim histories. Now listen closely. At 16, she was summoned. The room was warm with candlelight and power. She knelt, trembling, her bound feet screaming with every movement. The encounter was brief. She was not asked what she wanted. When it ended, she was dismissed without a word, as if nothing important had happened. By morning, her rank had changed. So had everything else. Servants bowed lower. Other women looked at her differently. Envy and fear replaced indifference. Pregnancy was both blessing and curse. A son meant protection, status, survival. It also meant danger. Other women watched her with new eyes. Servants whispered. Herbalists offered tonics that tasted bitter and wrong. She stopped eating unless her personal maid tasted the food first. At night, she slept lightly, one hand on her stomach, listening for footsteps, imagining threats in every sound. When her son was born, she wept silently. Loving him openly was forbidden. Children of the harem belonged to the system, not to their mothers. He was taken from her room often, raised by nurses and tutors loyal to the court, not to her. She saw him when allowed. She memorized his face, the shape of his mouth, the sound of his breathing, because she knew memory might be all she would ever have. Accusations came suddenly, as they always did. A whispered claim of disloyalty, a suggestion of improper behavior. No proof was required. She was interrogated without explanation. She denied everything, because denial was all she had. Torture was rare, but fear was constant. She knew women who vanished overnight. Their rooms sealed, their belongings burned. No one spoke their names again. Survival depended on appearing harmless. Desperation drove her to her only remaining weapon, sacrifice. She accused herself of a lesser crime, knowing punishment would fall on her instead of her child. She was stripped of rank, confined to a cold, narrow chamber at the edge of the palace. Her son was spared. That was enough. Pain was easier to endure than watching him disappear. Years later, she watched the seasons change through a barred window. Snow melted. Flowers bloomed. Leaves fell. Her feet were ruined. Her body weakened. Her youth long gone. She was no longer beautiful, no longer useful, no longer visible. Servants passed her door without looking inside. She existed in a space between life and death, waiting for something she could no longer name. When she finally died, there was no ceremony, no marker, no record worth preserving. The palace continued as it always had. New girls arrived. New children were born. The system endured without pause or regret. History did not remember her name. It recorded emperors, wars, and dynasties. It praised silk and porcelain, poetry and power. But beneath every polished artifact lies a story like hers, carved into flesh and silence.